Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend the Welcome to Fanfiction World, back with the amazing fanfiction. This is series a What If Deku Had Time Traveler Power. Until this point, today had been a good day for Izuku Midoriya. It was another day living his dream of becoming a hero. His time at UA, training to become the next #1 hero like his idol, All Might, had been great. He actually made friends with some of his classmates, and Kachan's bullying had diminished. It was still there, like when they had their first hero class. But this wasn't supposed to happen. Villains had infiltrated the USJ, where they were supposed to practice rescue training. One of the main villains had scattered his classmates around the USJ and he ended up with Tsuyu Asui and Minoru Mineta in the flood zone, surrounded by villains. At least they managed to escape. But that leads to where Izuku found himself now, watching in slow motion and frozen in place, as the main villain was about to kill Tsuyu right in front of him. When Shigaraki was nothing more than a hair's length away from Tsuyu's face, an enormous boom echoed throughout the whole of the USJ as a green blur broke through the roof, landed in the center, and continued moving at insane speeds right towards where Shigaraki was about to touch Tsuyu's face. The blur passed by, and Shigaraki's hand hit nothing but air. It happened in an instant. One moment Izuku was frozen by the edge of the flood zone, and now he was standing at the entrance with the rest of his classmates, who didn't get scattered as he did. Looks like I made it in time, I'm glad I did. A deep, unknown voice said. Turning to where the voice was, Izuku was met with what could only be described as a heavily modified version of his own hero outfit. The figure who was wearing the outfit was tall, had a lean build that was packed with enough muscles to not hinder any form of mobility. His entire build could be described as a broad-shouldered swimmer's build. His face was covered by a cowl with his iconic bunny ears and a metal mouth guard. Sadly, I can't stay still for any longer. More people need saving. The teachers will be here any second and protect you guys though. The unknown hero, for he must be a hero, said. His glowing green eyes and tone making everyone who could see and hear them feel safe. With a crackle of green lightning, the mysterious hero vanished from sight again. Does anyone know who that was? Someone asked. Izuku wasn't sure who. No, Izuku answered. But whoever it was is here to help. All of his classmates were surprised at Izuku's tone and felt the same safety spread through them as when the mysterious hero had assured them of their safety just seconds before. I didn't know you had such a broken mobility character unlocked Eraserhead, Shigaraki said, his tone drippy with venom and anger at being denied his kill. Guess instead of getting to All Might through his students, I will get to him through his coworker. A downright evil glint entered Shigaraki's as he made his way towards the downed pro hero. Shigaraki never got the chance to do anything, for when he was about to put his hand on Aizawa, the same green blur that took his students away came back, accompanied by another boom and a giant cloud of dust that obscured everyone's vision. I guess the shock absorption was stronger than I remember, or I just didn't hit it hard enough. The voice was unfamiliar, and one Aizawa didn't know, but even his own cynical thoughts felt strangely reassured. You came at me with a punch so strong it kicked up the ground. You would at the very least break a lot of my bones if that hit me. Oh, the hypocrisy of you heroes. Using violence to get your way. Oh, be quiet, you overgrown man-child. I knew your pet would come to save you, the new arrival said, his tone annoyed. And it means I need to beat it before I can get to you. So just sit tight, while I deal with your pet. With his piece said, another punch was thrown, but this time at the hulking monstrosity that held Aizawa down. It disappeared alongside the unknown hero and Aizawa himself, who showed up among his students at the entrance. Izuku, Deku, Midoriya was not having an enjoyable week. A week ago, While he was out on his daily patrol, he was hit by an unknown quirk while trying to de-escalate a situation with a quick gone out of control and found himself sent into the past. Dodging another wild punch thrown by the Nomu he was currently fighting, he threw his own counter-punch, overwhelming the shock absorption and throwing the Nomu into the air. Throwing out Black Whip and ensnaring the Nomu, Deku pulled himself towards it, punching it repeatedly, turning the Nomu into a yo-yo punching bag. Deku thought back to the week he had spent in the past and couldn't help but chuckle in his own head at the fact he turned vigilante again because of his need to save people. At least, this time it wasn't because of a misguided thought that he could do everything himself. Throwing the Nomu back down towards the ground, and embedding it in the concrete floor, Deku landed next to it in a crouch. Throughout his fight with this Nomu, he had thrown it around the USJ so he could rescue the rest of his then classmates. Pulling down his face guard, Deku smiled at Shigaraki and Kurogiri. The same smile he uses to keep civilians calm during rescue situations. The Nomu isn't getting up. I overloaded its shock absorption, and its healing has been overwhelmed. Please give up and turn yourself in and end this peacefully. The anger burning hot through Shigaraki boiled over. You cheater, you must have cheated. That Nomu was supposed to kill All Might. How can some nobody even put up a fight? Aga. Shigaraki was cut off again as the doors to the USJ burst open, and All Might appeared with the rest of the teachers of UA. A frown plastered on his face instead of his usual smile. Have no fear, students. Why? Because we are here. All Might yelled out, his voice heard through the whole of the USJ. Oh great, at least now I have the chance to actually kill you all. Instead of finishing his sentence, Shigaraki yelled out in pain as his hand burst open with blood as it was shot by Snipe, who kept firing his gun down at Shigaraki, who got hit in the leg before Kurogiri came to his rescue, teleporting them both away. Lifting his hands in surrender, Deku stood still to not provoke any of his old teachers to attack him. All Might appear in front of him, the same frown still in place. Keeping his own smile in place, Deku goes to explain. I'm only here to help, All Might. I have actually been wanting to talk to you and Nezu. It's really important. His frown deepening, All Might asks, and what would you need to talk to me and Nezu about? A frown also appearing on Deku's face. Can you get Smintos to give us some privacy? It is a sensitive topic. Not knowing why, maybe it was the serious tone or the fact this unknown vigilante had helped defend his students, but All Might deciding to trust him, mentioning for Smintos to put up a wall around him and the vigilante. Now that they were alone, a smile returned to Deku's face as he reached up for his cowl, taking it off, chuckling at the shocked expression on All Might's face when he saw his own. My name Izuku Midoriya, pro hero named Deku, and I'm from the future. The shock at seeing a grown Izuku Midoriya standing right in front of him didn't register in All Might's mind until the person in front of him spoke again and made him jump. I'm going to put on the cowl and face mask now and start helping. I know Eraser is in a rough spot and needs medical attention, and you need to think about your time limit. I will travel back to UA with the rest of the faculty. Nodding his head in reluctant agreement, they both jumped over the makeshift walls and made their way back to the entrance. All Might didn't notice the rest of his fellow teachers giving him odd looks at walking alongside the unknown, to them at least, unknown person. Helping to restrain villains who needed restraining and helping the students who were injured to the ambulance that arrived, the only thought on everyone's mind was, who is this masked hero who just showed up? The transport that Deku took alongside the teachers back to UA was filled with an awkward silence. Sighing to himself more than anyone, he addressed the teachers. I know you have questions, but my mission is currently confidential until I can report back to Nezu at UA. I can't divulge any information. Confusion set in first, which then gave way to a mild annoyance at what he said. Of course, a mysterious hero that shows up and rescues a class has something to do with Nezu. It was a beautiful woman with spiky dark purple hair and sky blue eyes, and a figure women would kill to have that, also known as R-rated hero, Midnight, that spoke up, her voice filled with exasperation. I really am sorry I can't talk more about the situation. You will most likely be debriefed by Nezu when I have made my report. Deku tried to console the irritated teacher, who still hadn't gotten used to their boss's antics. No, you're good. I just wish Nezu would inform us of his plans, at least that he just has a plan in place, so we wouldn't need to find out when everything has finished. This time, it was a slim man with long blonde hair spiked upwards in a large tuft, a pair of orange-tinted shades sitting on his nose, and what looked like a speaker collar around his neck. This was the voice hero, Present Mike. Arriving back at UA was surreal, both for students and heroes alike. Well, maybe just for All Might, as he was accompanied by a grown-up version of his successor for One for All. You know, if you keep this up it will only get more and more awkward. Said grown-up successor said, his tone jovial. Excuse me, young Midoriya. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the whole time travel thing that apparently happened to you. Yeah, sorry about this mess. Sadly, I don't think I can get back with what information I have right now, and that's why I need to talk to Nezu. Hopefully, he can help me. Arriving at Nezu's office door, they didn't get to knock on the door as a muffled voice from the other side said, "Come in." You know, I never found out how he does that, Deku said, humor filling his voice while grabbing the handle and actually opening the door. Upon entering Nezu's office, the person who inhabited the office could be seen sitting behind a desk doing paperwork. You know, even with my quirk high spec, I couldn't calculate the chances of alumni from the future showing up to save my students, Nezu said, his tone neutral and face kept carefully blank. Well, I didn't expect to find myself back in time and actually be able to save them. If it's any consultation, All Might showed up and saved everyone when it happened to me, Deku explained. And if you need evidence as to I am who I say I am, I, of course, know about One for All, and all the previous users, and I know things only Izuku Midoriya would know. Or you can just take a blood test and match it to my younger self. Oh, I don't doubt who you say you are, Mr. Midoriya. I'm just wondering what you are actually doing here, Nezu said, tone turning more jovial. Sighing to himself, Deku ran a hand through his hair and took a moment to collect his thoughts about everything. I am looking for a way to get back. I'm not in a hurry since I know my colleagues can take care of things while I'm away, but it doesn't sit right with me to let them handle things when I could help. The way Deku spoke, the assertiveness in his tone, that everything would be okay in his future without him, spoke of the level of trust he had in his fellow heroes. It filled All Might with a sense of pride. Toshi, get the stupid smile off your face before I punch it off you, Deku said, a laugh filling his voice. A faculty meeting had been called to discuss everything that had happened, and what could be done to prevent it in the future. Making note that everyone was there, Nezu started the meeting. I'm glad you all could make it, especially you, Aizawa. I'm glad to see your injuries were not as extensive as I thought they were. Nezu said, his tone as jovial as it normally is. Aizawa, with both arms bandaged across his chest, sighed. Yes, thanks to Recovery Girl, and the actions of our mysterious vigilante, I came out relatively unscathed. Now Nezu care to explain who this mystery person is? I assume he reported back as he said he would. As Aizawa finished, he turned to the mysterious person in question. Nezu also turned to him as well and asked in a deadpan tone, "You told them you would report to me?" I take it that was just an excuse to not reveal yourself right away. Giving an awkward chuckle, Deku answered, "Aha, yeah, I told them I was part of an experiment you had set up. I knew you enough in my time that you have a bad habit of not informing your staff of your plans unless they ask later, so I thought it was a good excuse until I talked to you," while rubbing the back of his head in embarrassment. During their interaction, confusion again spread through the UA faculty. If he wasn't working for Nezu, then who was he working for? What is his motive? And who the hell is he? I should probably explain, Deku said as he started taking off his face mask and cowl, earning gasps from the more vocal members of the faculty and widened eyes from the rest. My name is Izuku Midoriya, pro hero name, Deku, and I'm from the future. Deku was met with only silence at his declaration until Aizawa spoke up. Are you telling us you are the problem child Izuku Midoriya from the future? At his question, Deku gave him a deadpan look. Yes, I'm pretty sure I got hit with a quirk while out on patrol that sent me here. Of course, I didn't know right away I was sent back in time, and it took me a week to have that fact set in. Luckily I remembered my dates and made it before you got even more injured. At that Aizawa grumbled about problem children, but he did nod his head in thanks at the save. The next one to ask any sort of question was Midnight. Okay, so where do we go from here? Cool, you are from the future, but isn't it dangerous for you to meddle in events you know are going to happen? Shaking his head, Deku explained. When I went through my time, there was no me coming to save us. All Might saved us, and there was no bunny-eared vigilante running around. This lends itself to the fact I was sent to a different timeline, and should I meddle in anything, nothing will happen to my timeline, and this timeline will just have my help until I can travel back to my own time. Mr. Midoriya, since when did you gain knowledge of how time travel works? Nezu asked, intrigue clear on the Chimera's face. Realizing what he actually said, Deku chuckled. When someone like Mei creates all your support gear, and you are friends with someone like Melissa, you can't help but pick up a thing or two. And more than once has Mei researched time travel so she could get more time to invent. Mei Hatsume, that ball of chaos. Does she actually create things that don't explode in the future? Oh, thank God it gets better. The person who spoke up is Higuri Maijima, also known as Excavation Hero, Power Loader. He is a short and skinny man, with spiky ginger hair that reaches just past his shoulder. His fingers were tipped with orange L shapes, and his head was covered by what looks like a rectangular excavator claw turned into a helmet. Ah, I wouldn't say that. But it gets better. Don't worry, Deku answered. But enough about that. We need to plan for the future, and that's why I'm here, Deku said, smiling at the faculty, trying to convey that he would do all he could to help them. Izuku and his class had arrived back at UA and were getting checked over a second time just to be sure they were all okay, and then sent back home in groups so that a pro hero could accompany them. Izuku was alone in the nurse's office for his turn at being looked over by Recovery Girl, when the door opened and in walked a deflated All Might, with another person following him. It's you, Izuku yells when he sees who joined All Might in the nurse's office. Namely, the mysterious hero who saved them at the USJ. It is me, the mysterious hero yells out. That stopped Izuku before his gushing could start, and an awkward silence filled the room instead of Izuku's normal mumbling. Sorry, I have just never been on this side of the mumbling and wanted to stop it before we get all the revelations out of the way, the still masked hero said, his tone friendly and calming, as he took off his cowl and mask for what felt like the 1,000th time just today. Hello mini-me, pro hero, Deku said to Izuku Midoriya, whose eyes widened to an almost impossible degree, and his mouth simply fell open. Izuku was looking at a grown-up version of himself. A slight stubble on his chin, his hair still having the signature fluffiness to it, but having gotten an undercut. The older Izuku was giving them all a friendly smile. Huh, what, how, when, was all the younger Izuku could ask. Given everything that had happened today, it was understandable that the younger Izuku was just a tad bit frazzled. I'm from the future, guy with a rewind quirk on trigger hit me about a week ago, took me some time to realize where I actually was. The older Izuku said with a laugh while answering his younger counterpart's questions. What happens now? The younger Izuku timidly asked. Not knowing what the hell was going to happen now that a future version of him had somehow gotten transported into the past. This whole situation was just freaking weird. Wait, did their mom know there were two of him now? How was that going to work? I'm here to help until either the effect runs out, or I find a way to travel back to my time. And don't worry about mother, she should be on her way here as we speak. The older Izuku said, trying to soothe his younger counterpart's nerves. Now just take some deep breaths and try to relax until mom gets here. We both know how she will react, which reminds me, we should probably get a mop or something. Seeing the confusion on All Might's and Recovery Girl's faces, he explained, we are a family of criers, and when I say criers, I mean rivers. You should know, All Might. You have seen me cry. Mother is the same way. Conversations continued after they got a mop and bucket. The older Izuku spent most of the time talking about how the future was, and just enjoying the peace that had settled in the recovery room. That was until a quiet knock was heard and the door was opened by a small squat form of Inko Midoriya walked in. When she entered, her eyes widened. There was her son on the bed, which was bad enough to get her nerves on the fritz. But sitting at the end of the bed sat what could only be an older version of her son on the bed, giving her the most loving smile with his glowing emerald eyes that were simply filled with love. Hi mom, I've missed you, was the only thing Inko Midoriya heard before she passed out. As soon as the form of Inko Midoriya started falling, Deku was already there to catch her to make sure his mother didn't hurt herself in the fall. This wasn't the first time he made her faint, but he hated every time it happened. Just put her on one of the free beds, Sonny, I'll take it from there. The voice of Recovery Girl said, making her way to the same bed Deku was putting Inko into. Is this normal young Midoriya? All Might asked, feeling worried for his young charge mother. Yes, no, were the answers All Might got, one in a normal voice, and one yelled. Both the Izukus had answered at the same time. The younger of them was about to say something again when the older put his hand up. Izuku, mom cries literal rivers when she gets the slightest bit emotional. The fact you don't know it's normal she faints when surprised like this speaks a lot to how well she actually can hold herself together. Deku said, she will be okay in a minute or two. She has just been overwhelmed. How do you know that? Mom just fainted. That can be dangerous. Izuku said frantically, worry clear in his voice and shining in his eyes. Because danger sense didn't go off when she fainted. Like that explained everything. And what does your danger sense have to do with anything? Izuku yelled, getting more and more frustrated about the nonchalant way his older counterpart was acting. Their mother just collapsed in front of them. No, danger sense is the quirk of the fourth wielder of One for All. Deku said, making all of them stop what they were doing and look at him like he had gone insane. What? One for All started because the first wielder's quirk bonded with a transfer quirk. Is it so weird it bonded to the rest of the wielder's quirks? As a demonstration, Deku summons a bit of smoke and starts floating. It took time, but I've mastered them all. Even though the second wielder doesn't like to let me use his quirk that much. Nana says hi by the way. With his piece said, Deku sat down in a chair again, not really noticing how he left everyone in the room speechless, and All Might catatonic. Did you say, Nana? All Might asked, his voice timid and full of disbelief. How would Nana say, hi? And why did the older Izuku have to relay it to him? Ah yeah, I should probably explain. One for All has a space where I can talk to past users. Most of the time, they have to talk to me before I can talk back to them. But for some time now I can talk to them. And Nana, All Might's teacher by the way. The last part was directed to his younger counterpart. Nana asked that I say hi to you All Might. How is such a thing possible? All Might asked, still in disbelief. How was such a thing possible? Ah, that I don't know. Even in the future, there is still little known about quirks. And this is just so far beyond what a quirk should be able to do that I have just started saying, might as well be a thing, when it comes to new things with One for All. The older Izuku said, just giving them a shrug. Making both his younger counterpart and All Might sweat drop at the nonchalance of his answer. This was something big, not just something to push to the side and not think about. Mother should wake up any moment now, Deku said while turning to the bed he had laid her in. Inko slowly came back to consciousness. The first thought that came to her was, what happened? Trying to remember where she was, she could recall she had gotten a call from Ua saying she should come to the school and that her son had been injured. Oh God, her son had been injured. With that last thought, she bolted up from the bed she was laying in and looked around the room. She could see she was in a nurse's office with some hospital beds. Easy there, young miss, you just fainted. I would like to check your vitals before I let you out of the bed. The voice of recovery girl came from Inko's right side. I'm sorry, but what is going on? Inko's voice was timid and confused. Don't worry Mrs. Midoriya, everything is fine, another voice said from her left. A very skinny man with sharp features. His arms and legs were too long for his body. He also looked sickly. You were called here because we have a lot to talk about. I'm Yagi Toshinori by the way, a teacher here at UA. His voice was understanding but had a professional tone to it. Okay, I still don't understand what is happening. The one who called me said my son was injured. Is he okay? There was a rush and maternal love filling every single word Inko spoke. It was clear to both Recovery Girl and All Might that Inko cared more about Izuku than herself. She had just woken up after fainting, and the first thing she thought about was her son's safety. Young Midoriya is just over there. He is fine, but during an exercise at the Unforeseen Simulation Joint Studio or the USJ Studio, villains infiltrated. They got saved, and no harm came to any of the students. Aizawa, their teacher, took on the villains until reinforcement came. The explanation came from Mr. Yagi. Inko was a mess internally, even when she just got confirmation that nothing happened to her son or his classmates. She almost burst into tears at the thought of her baby boy being in such serious trouble. Being left to her own thought, Inko finally got a proper look of the entire room, and true enough there was her boy, sitting in the bed, looking at her with worry shining in his eyes. But it was the person sitting next to his bed that made her stop and widen her eyes in surprise and confusion. He looked like her own Izuku, just older, more mature, and bigger in the muscle department. When he looked back at her, the same worry that her son shone in his eyes, Inko remembered what he said before she fainted. He called her mom and said he had missed her. But she didn't have a second son. She would know if she had given birth to another son. Seeing the confusion in her eyes, the older Izuku stood up. I know everything is chaotic right now, but me being here is the main reason you were called instead of Ua coming to you. Inko could see he tried to compose himself before he continued. My name is Izuku Midoriya. I'm 36 years old. I'm your son from the future. He said, in the same serious voice her own Izuku spoke in when he actually meant what he said. She almost fainted again, but she just cried. Inko could see fear clearly on his face. The fear a son could only feel when he was afraid of getting rejected by their parents. Oh, how much her baby boy had gone through. I believe you, Inko said, her voice nothing but a whisper, but he heard her. And that brilliant smile he got on his face when he was truly happy lit up the room. Hearing his mom, even if she didn't know him specifically, made Deku happy, happier than he thought it would. But that could wait, there was more serious stuff to talk about. Letting out a small sigh, Deku schooled his face. Apparently, everyone in the room felt the change in Deku. Because the cheerful atmosphere that had just come disappeared. Mom, that isn't the only thing we need to talk with you about. It's about our quirk and the history behind it. And at this point, you don't know the history either, do you mini-me? Deku asked, getting a shake of the head from his younger counterpart. Deku let out another sigh. This was going to take a while. Okay, listen carefully then, because this is important. The story of our quirk, One for All, started with two brothers. And with that Deku started telling the story. About the quirk One for All, what it was, what it could do, what it stood for, and the goal behind it. The explanation took some time since Inko fainted a second time when she found out about All Might's injury, and the fact she was in the same room as All Might, and the fact All Might had chosen her baby boy to be his successor. All of this resulted in her fainting. Which was understandable, to a degree. Luckily, she wasn't out for long, and the explanation continued. When Deku was finished with the story, there was not a word spoken, until Inko asked a single question that everyone had on their mind. What are you going to do now? Deku simply gave them a bright smile. I'm going to be training myself. No more breaking bones when you use One for All. I mean, really, not to sound like a prat, but we are incredibly smart when we apply ourselves. How we didn't figure out how to actually use One for All until your first internship is beyond me. The way Deku spoke said a lot about how annoyed he was at himself. I mean, it took that cranky old shit Gran Torino hitting us maybe too many times in the head before we got it. Young man, that is no way to speak. Inko said, more out of reflex than anything, when she heard her boy curse. The tone she spoke in caused Deku to flinch. It had been a long time since his mother had reprimanded him. And it took him by surprise. Sorry, Mom, he said, rubbing the back of his head in embarrassment. Deku could feel a set of eyes on him. Turning to them he could see All Might shaking slightly with his eyes wide. You said Gran Torino teach you. Why would he teach you? Unless he found out about young Midoriya and didn't think I was doing a good enough job at teaching him, oh dear God. All Might's continued ramblings scared both Izuku and Inko. Izuku, seeing the both of them turn to her, she clarified. No, the older. Sorry sweetheart, we have to make this less confusing. She said, in an apologetic tone. But why is All Might of all people shaking in fear? Is it because of this, Gran Torino? Deku gave out a loud belly laugh at the question. Gran Torino was All Might's teacher for a year, and since then he has been scared of him. You should have seen him when he gave me his intern offer. He was shaking in fear and told me it was nice knowing me like I was going to my death. Isn't that old fart retired? The question came from Recovery Girl, who was looking annoyed at the mention of Gran Torino. Making Izuku laugh out loud again. Do you think someone like Gran Torino would retire fully? He is active, but only small time. He said with a smile of remembrance on his face. Anyway, how long is it till the sports festival? About 2 weeks' time. Why? Recovery Girl asked. At the answer, Deku gained an almost feral smile. Because that's how much time I have to get Mini-Me up to par. Deku said. His tone made a chill run down Izuku's spine. Why did he suddenly have a fear for his limbs? But let's start 2 days from now. If I remember correctly, you will have lessons specifically so you can train for the sports festival. But for now, you two should head home. It's been a long day. I will have some pros escort you home. Saying goodbye to his younger counterpart and his mother, Deku let all the bravado he had been using to hide his nerves fade away. Today had been emotional. Explaining everything to the best of his ability required him to think back to some not so pleasant things that still gnawed at his emotions. Arriving at his assigned room, he could stay in until he found a way home or another place to stay at. But he had to put his emotion aside. For now, he had things he needed to plan. Night Eye was someone he needed to get a hold of. Eri could not be allowed to stay. With Overhaul, the fact he knew she was suffering, and he was still at Uwakut Deep. That little girl should be allowed happiness and not suffer a moment longer. After having left a written note to Nezu so he knew what he was doing, Deku put on the cowl and face mask and set out. What he didn't account for was meeting Nezu at the entrance to the Uwa grounds. Having a midnight stroll, Mr. Midoriya? Nezu asked, even though he knew it wasn't a stroll. You didn't need his quirk to know when someone was sneaking out. I need to talk to Sir Night Eye. He's looking into a case of some old Yakuza. They have someone captured I need to rescue as soon as possible. Deku said, urgency and desperation clear. Deku knew Nezu could do nothing to stop him from going out. But Deku needed Nezu on his side. Deku also knew that his plan wasn't thought out, but given even the smallest chance of saving Eri, he would take. Even if he had to storm their base himself. And who could they have that you need to go by yourself to Sir Night Eye instead of telling me about it so we could come up with a plan? Nezu asked, more curious than anything. Deku had been so open to working together earlier today. What changed? A girl named Eri, her quirk, lets her rewind living things back to a previous state. They are doing experiments on her to create quirk-destroying bullets. They succeed not long in the future. But they are doing it at the cost of a young girl who couldn't have been over 6 at the time we came to get her. The anger in Deku's voice was clear when he talked about the girl, Eri. Now I need to get to Sir Night Eye because he knows the most about their base and members. Now don't be so hasty, Mr. Midoriya. We will contact him tomorrow with a message of urgency, and we will let him in on the plans you have come with until now. You said he was someone you trusted. Get some sleep before you collapse, even if it's barely. I can see you are exhausted. Nezu said, his tone taking on a pleading quality. Trying to appeal to Deku's sense of reason instead of his emotions. Sighing, Deku almost fell to his knees. He knew it wasn't a good idea when he was this exhausted, but he didn't want Eri to suffer any more than she did. But Deku relented in the end. Nezu was right. He needed all his energy to help Eri and defeat Overhaul. As he was now, it would be too close of a fight to call. All right. Tomorrow, but not later. Send the message tonight so he can read it in the morning. Deku said, annoyance at the whole situation clear on both his face and in his voice. I'll see you tomorrow, Nezu. With that, Deku turned around going back towards his room to sleep. His anger at the whole situation simmering. He would defeat Overhaul, kill him if he had to, as he did with his version of Overhaul.